There is a reason why the forces of darkness do not announce their presence with banners and fanfare. Their success depends on one thing: your indifference. So long as you remain unaware, they have already won half the battle. You see, evil does not need to conquer you. It only needs you to forget that you are already in a war. The enemy thrives on ignorance, not through overwhelming force, but through subtle whispers that lull the mind into complacency. He does not need to shackle you with chains. He only needs to keep you from seeking the key. This is why distraction is one of his greatest tools. He will not always come with terror or violence, no. That would wake you up. Instead, he will fill your life with noise, with endless trivialities, with amusements that keep you entertained, but never enlightened. A man who is always busy, always scrolling, always talking but never thinking, is a man who is easy to lead. But the moment you stop and seek truth, the war begins in earnest. Have you ever noticed that when you try to focus on what truly matters, on prayer, on study, on reflection, there is suddenly an interruption? A pressing task appears, a restless boredom sets in, or a quiet whisper in your mind tells you that it can wait until tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week becomes never. And all the while the enemy smiles, for he has stolen your most valuable possession, your attention. It is no accident that wisdom is hard won. To read, to learn, to reflect, these are acts of war against the darkness. Every word of truth, every moment of clarity, every prayer uttered in sincerity is a blade against the lie that you were meant to live in ignorance. The enemy knows that an awakened mind is a dangerous mind. He cannot deceive the one who questions, cannot control the one who seeks, and cannot own the one who knows who he truly is. So seek, even when it is difficult. For nothing terrifies the darkness more than a mind that refuses to sleep. The devil does not need to storm the gates of your soul with fire and fury. His craft is subtler, more patient. He does not break in, he convinces you to leave the door ajar. He does not silence you, he persuades you that speaking is pointless. He does not blind you, he simply gives you 100 other things to look at instead. His work is not always in the horrors of the world, but in the slow erosion of truth, the quiet fading of conviction, the gentle drift away from what matters. And the easiest way to accomplish this: keep you from seeing, keep you from knowing, keep you from reading. A mind that does not question is a mind that can be led anywhere. A man who does not seek truth will settle for lies simply because they are offered freely. The devil does not need to make you love him. He only needs to make you indifferent to what is true. And what is truth but light in a dark place? The one who reads, who studies, who wrestles with ideas, he is a fire that cannot be easily extinguished. This is why distraction is so relentless. It is no small thing that our age is filled with noise, with endless images, with empty words that demand attention but offer nothing in return. If the enemy can keep you entertained, he can keep you asleep. If he can keep you busy, he can keep you from thinking. And if he can keep you from thinking, he can keep you from seeing the trap he has set before your feet. But the moment you seek, the moment you ask, the moment you knock, the darkness begins to tremble, for it knows it cannot withstand the light. There is a reason darkness avoids the light. It is not because it is strong, but because it is weak. It cannot fight directly, so it must deceive. It cannot create, so it must corrupt. It cannot stand exposure, so it must keep you distracted, tired, and indifferent. The forces that work against you do not fear your strength. They fear your awareness. The moment you begin to see clearly, their power begins to slip away. This is why reading, reflection, and truth-seeking are such dangerous weapons. When you fill your mind with wisdom, when you seek what is real instead of what is easy, when you choose to know rather than to be entertained, you become something the enemy cannot control. Lies have no power over a mind that is awake. Confusion cannot take hold where truth has been planted. This is why the battle is not fought with swords and shields, but with knowledge and understanding. Darkness does not fear brute force, it fears exposure. But this is not merely about grand truths or theological debates. It is about the smallest choices you make every day. Have you ever noticed how difficult it is to sit in silence and think how hard it is to read when distractions are always near? That is no accident. Darkness thrives in a world where people do not pause, do not reflect, do not question. The more you seek, the more the enemy will attempt to divert you. And yet the moment you persist, when you read even when it feels dull, when you pray even when it feels empty, when you choose wisdom over comfort, the grip of deception weakens. The enemy fears nothing more than a mind that refuses to be led astray. The greatest victories in spiritual warfare are not always won through dramatic gestures, but through the smallest acts of defiance. The enemy does not always attack with fury. More often he works in slow, steady erosion, convincing you that your choices are insignificant. A prayer left unsaid, a book left unread, a kind word left unspoken. These seem like small things, but they are the very cracks through which darkness seeps in. But here is the great secret. Just as neglect gives the enemy room to work, even the smallest resistance weakens him. A whispered prayer, even when you doubt its power, is a defiance against despair. A single act of kindness in a world that preaches selfishness is an open wound in the enemy's plans. Choosing truth, even when it would be easier to accept a lie, is a hammer against the foundations of his deception. The enemy works tirelessly to make you believe that small things do not matter. He will tell you that your effort is meaningless, that one moment of discipline will not change anything, that one act of love will be forgotten. But that is a lie. A single spark can burn down a forest. A single drop of water can wear down stone. And a single soul who chooses truth, even in the smallest ways, is more dangerous to the enemy than 1,000 who do nothing at all. This is why you must never underestimate the power of small choices. Every time you seek truth instead of comfort, every time you resist laziness, every time you choose to love instead of hate, you are participating in a war far greater than you can see. And whether you realize it or not, the enemy trembles at every small victory you claim. If there is one thing the enemy cannot stand, it is joy. Not mere happiness, which is fleeting and dependent on circumstances, but true joy, the deep, unshakable delight in what is good, what is true, what is eternal. Darkness feeds on despair, on fear, on bitterness. It wants you weighed down by anxiety, preoccupied with troubles, convinced that all is lost. A heart that is heavy is easy to control, easy to silence, easy to manipulate. But a heart that rejoices, even in suffering, is beyond the enemy's grasp. This is why joy is not merely an emotion, but a weapon. To laugh in the face of trials, to sing even when there is no reason to wake up each day with gratitude despite hardship, these are acts of defiance against the forces that seek to consume you. The enemy would rather you be miserable in comfort than joyful in difficulty, because misery makes you forget the truth, that you are free, that you are loved, that you are victorious even in battle. You may have noticed how quickly joy is attacked. The moment you find peace, something comes to disrupt it. The moment you experience gratitude, something tries to steal it away. This is not coincidence. The enemy knows that a soul full of joy cannot be easily led into despair. So he will do everything to convince you that joy is naive, that it is foolish, that it is temporary. But joy is eternal. It is not rooted in circumstances, but in truth. And truth does not change. So choose joy. Laugh, love, be grateful, not because life is always easy, but because it confounds the darkness. There is no greater rebellion against the enemy than a soul that refuses to be shaken. The battle is not waged with swords or shields, nor is it fought in distant lands. It is here now, in the quiet moments of decision, in the unseen choices of every day. The enemy does not need to destroy you. He only needs to keep you blind, distracted, indifferent. But the moment you begin to seek, the moment you resist, the moment you refuse to surrender your mind, your heart, and your joy, you become something he cannot control. Read, because ignorance is the enemy's greatest weapon. Seek, because truth is the light that darkness cannot endure. Defy, even in the smallest ways, for every act of faith, every prayer, every choice toward what is good, weakens the grip of deception. And above all, rejoice. For the greatest victory over evil is not found in mere survival, but in refusing to let fear and despair take hold of your soul. Do not be fooled into thinking you are powerless. Do not believe the lie that your choices do not matter. The smallest candle still shatters the deepest night, and every time you choose to see, to seek, to resist, to rejoice, you send tremors through the very foundations of the enemy's kingdom. So stand firm, read, think, love, and know this: the enemy trembles at those who refuse to sleep.